Hi, you've reached the voicemail of Hannah Brett with Connect Call. Just leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.
1 for more options.
Hey, Hannah. We spoke about a year ago, and you were amazing at helping my son's journey with his mental health and addiction. Unfortunately, kind of like those Zoom calls that we were starting out with where my ex couldn't find time to talk, lives are just being lived, right? My kids are getting older. I've got some in college. I've got some now having babies, but everybody's very, very concerned, about their little brother. And here we are again. He's desperately needing treatment. And I guess I'm coming back to you to kind of talk to you about placement again.
Hi, it's Hannah Brett with another episode of Connect Call, where I often say that I do not have a clinical background, but I do have a PhD in picking up the phone for families in crisis. Don't you agree? Kind of, sort of.
Love that.
There we go. So we have Kelli Grant on this episode of Connect Call. I've only been doing this for 3 months, Kelli. So because of that, I get very nervous, and I feel like I haven't really expressed enough that the people that I have brought on this show, I've not only connected with over the years, I've collected over the years, and I've truly loved a majority of you guys. You being definitely, if people don't know Kelli and Hannah, I'm sorry for that, but Kelli and I have come up together since the beginning. I met Kelli Grant when she was working in admissions at Talbot Recovery in Atlanta. I was doing marketing. I looked at this little cute blonde debutante at the time saying, what would we have in common? And realized
Everything.
Everything.
Except for movies.
Movies. But that Kelli has not only been an amazing friend over the years, but she has been an amazing colleague and confidant in the work that we do. Kelli, I'm just going to read a little bit about your bio, brings more than 2 decades of clinical and leadership experience to her role as co-CEO of Prospect Hill. Her background spans IOP, PHP, and residential treatment, giving her a deep, practical understanding of the full continuum of care for behavioral health care. Known for her ability to build genuine collaborative relationships, she emphasizes clear communication, ethical decision-making, and ensuring that clients and families feel supported throughout the treatment process. Nobody does it better than Kelli Grant, everybody. I will say that.
Thank you.
Over the years, Kelli, like myself, now she's a big old CEO. She's big time. But back in the day, Kelli, she still does, but Kelli and I would be, those people on the other end of the phone, right? And I used to joke with Kelli, not joke, but through the years, I think what I've learned is you sometimes have to have better boundaries with the callers, because they can really just, a lot of times people that are calling us have never gone to a therapist or spoken to anybody about what's going on. And so they can really just tell you everything. And there is nobody better or has more compassion on the other end of the phone than you, Kelli. And you still do. I mean, even as a CEO, you're still taking those calls daily and spending hours talking to clients and families. And so I thought there was going to be nobody better to really discuss this topic that I've touched on through all the episodes, but really want to dive into, especially with Kelli today, which is really the family piece, right? And I know this from personal and professional experience, and I can't say this enough, when a family member, a loved one is identified, the identified patient, right, who needs some more clinical supervision, some help going to treatment. A lot of times, I think parents and families think it's like college or anything else where they'll do they'll invest in the process and learn about the program and resources and paying and everything. But they think as soon as they get that person right into treatment, we're good.
We're done.
We're done. And yes, like my mother used to say, now I can sleep at night. Now that I know Hannah's safe, I can sleep at night. But what made the difference in my treatment is my mom also knew that the work was now beginning for her as well, right? And there's really no, a lot of people have outcome studies and all this science and evidence to what works and what doesn't work. And across the board, I will say, and I'm sure you'll agree, Kelli, that the cases or the people that seem to do better with healing with their mental health and addiction are really those where the family is invested and the loved ones in that household are invested in the process, not only with their help, but the help for themselves so that, everyone's kind of changing, right? Kelli, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. So let's just kick right off into it and start with some basic questions. Um, I think when I think of this question of families thinking the hardest part is just getting someone into treatment, there's so many misconceptions with that. I'll first start with this. A lot of times, and I'm sure you can relate to this, and I need all listeners, viewers to hear this. A lot of times I'll have a mom who will say, "Hey, my son Johnny, he's finally agreed to go to treatment. So we need to act fast. We need to get him in because he's finally agreeing today." Right? I often then say to that mother, that's typical of what we find when Johnny knows the jig is up. Johnny's run out of substances possibly to abuse, or he's coming off of something, right? But here's the thing, until that family is somewhat prepared or that's half the battle, just getting them through the door. It's the real work is then when they get through that door and the phone starts to ring, right? So what do you think is just in your opinion, an experience, the biggest misconceptions families have with their role in beginning this recovery process for mental health and addiction?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception is something you hit on a minute ago about the families being done. So the
Right,
biggest misconception is that the treatment is just something that's going to be done for their loved one rather than something that the entire family system needs to participate in.
right,
Meaning, admission to a treatment center, great first step, incredible first step, beautiful first step. It's not the finish line.
right,
And so the person goes to treatment to change and to learn and to regulate their emotions and to have healthier coping skills and for them to learn how to set boundaries. But if the family's not growing alongside with them, doing those exact same things, having a parallel process, then that loved one comes home to the same environment that contributed to that struggle in the first place.
right,
So, rarely is recovery, whether it be mental health, addiction, eating disorders, doesn't matter. Rarely is that an individual process. It's a family process. And so I think
right,
that's the biggest misconception is our job here is done.
right,
We got Hannah into treatment.
right.
So now let's
We're
let the
good.
experts fix her.
Let's go on vacation.
And then we'll be here to welcome her home with open arms.
right.
But we're done. We're on break. We're on holiday. I say holiday because you have a red telephone booth. So I'm going to say holiday.
Because I'm
instead
reporting
of
live
vacation.
from the UK, everybody. But I am connect call from the UK. But we're international, Kelli. I just want you to
Yes,
know.
we are.
I actually
Global
just did the
domination.
analytics on this podcast, Connect Call. And although I have 28 subscribers, hopefully 29 by
I'm
the
one of
end.
those.
Thank you. Guys, hit subscribe on Apple,
Subscribe
on
now.
Spotify, YouTube. But I learned that we are being watched or listened to in China, in Germany, Mexico. So I'm all over the world. I'm just like Mel Robbins at this point. So here's a great example I always give families when moms I'm going to just say a mom is rushing to get Junior in and just kind of be done. I immediately say, great, we get him in the door tomorrow. Your phone starts to ring. What are you going to do? And then the mom says, well, why do they have the phone? You should just take the phone away. I'm like, well, that's not real life, is it? Right? Like we're going to start working these skills and changing making these little shifts right now, which by the way, when I say these shifts out loud, they seem so little, but why I think this family piece, and we're going to get into it, is so important is as difficult as it is for the patient, the client to build new coping skills, to reprogram their brain and doing something different than they normally do, it is just as hard for those family members. Everybody serves a purpose. Everyone has a role, right? And we're asking everyone to change, right? And so, why do you think, I think I'm going to answer this too, but why do you think that families think their job is done once a family member goes to treatment? I know they're just exhausted, but why do you think they're
That's what,
done?
because they're exhausted. You took my word. Because they are exhausted. These families have been living in crisis for years, decades, some of them, right? They've
Right,
been trying to keep everyone safe. They've been trying to manage consequences. They've been trying to survive. So when
right.
their loved one finally enters treatment, it's understandable that they would feel relief. And I think the challenge is when relief is mistaken for resolution.
Ooh, Kelly, I like that.
Right? Like you feel and you deserve to feel relief.
You
I
do.
just actually was on the phone with a mom this morning, whose son is on his way to treatment today after years, probably about like 15 years to be honest. And I said to her, I hope you get some much deserved
Right,
R&R
right,
tonight,
right,
knowing that he's safe, knowing that you don't have to be anxious for that phone call in the
right.
middle of the night, whether it's a hospital, police, him, whatever, right? So it's understandable and they deserve to feel relief. I just think that relief too often gets misunderstood, like I said, for resolution. And treatment really is an opportunity for everyone to experience healing in the
Right.
family. And just to begin their own work. But I do think we need to honor these families and let them have that minute. Like for her, it'll
Course.
be today while he's on the plane. And then once we get him, have that minute to just be relieved. So I don't want to
Right.
come at families too hard of like,
No.
and now you need to start your work. And if you don't do this, then he's going to come home and it's going to be the exact same vicious cycle, right?
Right.
Give them that minute
Right.
while at the same time educating them of like, now, now we've got a template so that
I
true healing can happen.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll agree. 9 times over 10, if not 10 out of 10, I will always prefer the client to come in who's worked with a family interventionist already. And when I say
Mhm,
family interventionist, that's an interventionist. No interventionist is just talking to the client and
mhm.
the patient to bring them into treatment and not getting family educated and on board. Again, I think I always like to use my mom as a really good example because my mom knew nothing about addiction. She knew nothing about mental health. Nobody loved their kid more than my mom loved me, but the smartest thing that she ever realized right out the gate was like, wait a minute, I can't mom my way through this,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And me momming her hasn't worked thus far. So maybe I need to change some things that I'm saying and doing to help Hannah go after and do the work herself. And I think at the beginning, when she had the sleep and the rest, it was just innate that she realized, how can I ask my kid to go to a meeting and ask for a number if I can't even do that myself? Or how can I ask my kid to, oh, you're uncomfortable, go talk to a counselor and me not do it myself? Because, I say to parents all the time and I say to families, no, this isn't your fault, right? Nobody's fault. Yes, the genetics get involved, and yes, um, some of the molding and parenting can get into it. Where it becomes, you know, uh, unless everybody changes, and it's that's where I think I don't understand why families don't want to change. The only reason I feel like they don't want to do the work or change is because a lot of times people don't want to have to look at themselves and their piece
Mhm.
in this. You know,
Shame is very powerful.
Yes. And I'm gonna go off on all these tangents, but one of the things I always think about families today, no shame to these parents, but there's a lot of gentle parenting going on. And what we talk about with that is, these are parents who were raised maybe with more structure, more discipline, and now they're like, we're not gonna do that to our kid. We're not spanking our kid. We're not gonna, punish our kid. And what ends up happening is it translates to, well, we can't handle our kid being uncomfortable because that makes us really uncomfortable, right? So I think the next question, and something I'm going to give a great example, is I had a female client, and yes, she happened to be diagnosed as borderline. And this was a client over the years. This is her MO. She'd go into treatment. I used to love this kid actually. She used to get everyone together to make a huge announcement that she was running from treatment, right? And
Mhm.
everyone was concerned, including her parents. And she would run, and within 5 minutes, she'd call mom, she would call dad, manipulate, get this whole thing going. And they would cave every time and bring her home because God forbid their daughter was on the street or their son, right? And I remember we were working with a family interventionist at the time who was case managing this family. And I was on a Zoom call with these parents, and it was happening again. This young woman was with us. She is about to leave. And we said, guys, this has happened before. Let's do this just a little differently this time. All we're going to ask, baby steps, tiny shift, which will make a huge difference, we hope, but just trust us. All we need you to do is when she runs, just give us like 3 hours. Just don't pick up the phone for 3 hours. Okay. That's all. Or even an hour. Try that. Right. And I remember the first time she ran, they couldn't do it. And then the second time she ran, we were like, trust us, just don't pick up the phone, just something different will happen because of that. And because they didn't pick up that phone, the best thing happened. She immediately called the treatment team at the treatment center and said, first, are my parents okay? They're not picking up the phone. And second, I have nowhere to go. I guess I'm coming back. So it was beautiful. Like I could not have written it better. And that's what I'm talking about. And I think for families just to assume this, when families are like, we sent them there for 30 days. Why are they not fixed? And I'm like, you guys can't even shift yourselves a little bit. Everyone has to do that work. Everyone's a part of getting this individual and your family better. I think it's a win-win no matter what. My mother didn't have addiction. My mother wasn't struggling. Well, she did struggle with some anxiety and depression and felt like her daughter could be medicated and didn't want to take medicine herself, but that's a British thing. But I think I feel like all you're doing is making your family and you guys better. It's nothing's, but why do you feel that these families find these tiny shifts so difficult?
So here's what I say to families a lot of times. It's not because you haven't been loving them enough, right? It's not for a lack of love. We're not
Exactly.
asking you to love them less. We're asking you to love them differently.
Thank you. It's not tough love, everybody. It's
No.
loving differently. That's
It's
all we're
loving
doing.
differently. It's loving with healthier boundaries.
Right.
It's like most of these families, they've been loving the best way they know how.
Right.
And there's often so much generational trauma, right? This is
Right.
incredibly difficult and challenging because you're asking people to do things different than the way they've been doing it for decades, than the way their parents did it, than the way their grandparents did it, right?
Right.
So on and so forth. So you're trying to shift a system that has been loving in
Right.
an unhealthy, with the best of intentions, but
Right.
in a way that wasn't serving anyone. And so
Right.
that's really hard to do because these families have been loving in a way that actually shows up as rescuing, as
Mhm.
overcompensating. They're trying to avoid conflict, and ultimately they're sacrificing their own well-being. But those behaviors, they come from a place of fear, not from a place of bad intentions.
No, not
And
at
so
all.
that's what I tell families all the time. I'm not asking you to love her less. I'm asking you to love her differently. And it actually warmed my heart when you were telling the story about the young lady who would leave. One of my favorite jobs was probably 10 years ago now. But I was a clinical case manager for a young adult unit in a big treatment center. And so with the young adult population comes a lot of exactly what you're describing. And we weren't a locked facility, so we couldn't keep kids against their
Right.
will, right?
Right.
But we knew this young man was probably going to leave. And so I gave the family a heads up and I said, if he leaves, I will call you. We have to let him have his phone when he leaves. You're going to stay on the phone with me
Thank
while
you.
he's calling you.
Yep.
And we are going to know that the treatment team, the counselor assistant, they are going to be behind him in a car talking to him, right?
Right.
Helping
Right.
him understand why he needs to come back with them in a very loving way. But he's going to be blowing you up to say, this place
Blowing
is
your phone
horrible.
up.
Get me out of here. I
Right.
don't have a pillow. The food sucks. All
They're
these
only
things.
giving me Taco Bell once a week. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I'm like, I can take Taco Bell any chance I can get it. But that was the thing. And And I knew that those parents, no judgment, right? But those parents, it would have been impossible for them not to pick up the phone. So
Right.
I just said, we are going to stay on the phone and you're going to tell me when he's calling and we're going to process, how does that make you feel right now?
Right.
What can you control? What can we do? Long story long, the young man eventually did get in the car. This went on for quite some time. I'm obviously summarizing. But that was an example of, I'm not asking you to love him less. I'm asking you to love him differently.
Yeah. When I think of that, I think of, to this day, when I say the Lord's Prayer in an
Mhm.
AA meeting, I say, lead me not into Penn Station, because instead of temptation, because one of my worst relapses as a kid in treatment, I was on a day pass, was in Penn Station. And why it was such an important day for me was I had 6 months of sobriety. I was finally going, it was my second round of treatment. My mom said, hey, we're going to try it their way now, not your way. And when I asked how long I was staying, she said, how long is a piece of string? Because we're going to listen to them and not you. And I remember I had 6 months sober and I was going to visit a friend of mine in Long Island and I was taking the train and I got to Penn Station and Attack of the Body Snatchers came over me, which I call it, where I was like, I'm just going to have a drink. I'm going to be fine. And I went into a bar and I had 2 or 3 drinks and it was like clockwork for me. I drank and then immediately called my mom from a payphone because that's all we had at the
Mhm.
time. And because I had no more money. And I just called her and I said, Mom, I've drank. I have no money. I'm in Penn Station, mind you, in New York City. My mother is living in the UK. And my mother, thank God she was doing the family work, goes like this very simply: Hannah, I am so sorry that you're struggling right now. And I'm really sorry that you have made the choice to drink. But unfortunately, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing where I can help you. You're going to need to reach out to those who can really help you at the treatment center. So hang up the phone, give them a call, and we'll talk later. Click.
I can only imagine how hard it was for your
Right?
mom to say that. God bless her. That's beautiful and exactly what you needed to hear. But
Right.
as a mom,
Like,
being able to
well,
say that,
right.
when she hung up the phone, she was shaking, she was crying, but
I mean,
she
don't
did
get it
it.
wrong. She was still talking to the treatment center, like that family,
Yeah.
and they were reassuring her they can come get me. But what immediately happened for me that day was 2 things. One, I go, holy shit, my mom's brain's been hijacked, like where I'm manipulating unintentionally, I guess. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why, who's she listening to now? Like,
Mhm.
my work is not working. And the other thing happened immediately. I called the treatment center and I asked for help. And kept with that verbiage. Anytime I had a bad day, she's like, so sorry. Let's get off the
Mhm.
phone and talk to somebody who actually gets where you're at, which isn't
Yeah.
me, you know?
Yeah.
And I tell you what, you talk to them and I'm going to go to a meeting and talk to somebody myself, another mom who's going through what I'm going through. Right. And she didn't do it perfectly. No parent does. But what it taught me right away was, um, she wasn't going to rescue me. And by the way, I have to stress, the reason my mom did all this is because she didn't want me to die, you know? And that's what I say to families. It's kind of like also, if your kid doesn't want to go to school, you don't like negotiate with them, right? And I think um it's it's just going back to, you know, it's as simple as your way is not working, so let's try something different, you know? And I remember, and you remember Dr. Michael Fishman, who worked at
Of
Talbot many
course.
years ago. He taught me something very valuable because he was very passionate about the young adults. And he said, the biggest misconception families have is I need to get my son or daughter so they don't live on the streets. I need to pick them up so they're not on the streets and going to a really, dark place in their head of what's going to happen on the streets, right? And he said, if you look up any statistics, if you track any cases, the majority of kids that are overdosing or passing away are are at their
In
parents'
their parents'
houses. They're
houses.
not on the
Exactly.
street, you know? And
But
and go on.
well, I was just gonna say, I mean, exactly what you're describing, but they make parents make these mistakes because they're
They're
trying to
scared also.
reduce. Yeah,
Yeah,
well, they're terrified, but they're trying to reduce immediate pain
right,
instead of promoting long-term healing.
right,
So they just want that immediate pain to stop,
right.
and by doing so, long-term healing can't happen.
Right. And it's kind of like what we say, somebody said to me when I was in treatment, and we can say it to families too, stop playing the trailer of the movie, play the whole movie out.
Yeah.
Because what I say to a
I
family is
love
like,
that. I've never heard that.
yeah, thanks. I've got a few of those things. Um, I also said, I was telling the story the other week. We were talking about, during treatment, I didn't know if I was gay, straight, what I was. And I was, of course, finding love in all the wrong places. So I was dating a guy in treatment and dating a woman, I think, in treatment. And I remember the CEO at the time, Bruce
You were very
Drever.
busy.
I was very busy looking for love in all the wrong places. And Bruce, this curmudgeon of a CEO who made such an impact in my life, pulled me into the office and he goes, Hannah, I always say the guys need to stick with the guys and the girls need to stick with the girls. I don't know what the fuck to do with you, so just look at the floor.
Stick.
Yeah. So, but I don't even know why I just had that story. But so I think, and I will say from my own experience, and I've seen this unfortunately where parents have rescued their kid from treatment or pulled them out for many reasons. One, they don't want their child uncomfortable. And sometimes, I hate saying it, they don't know what to do when their kid starts to get better and they don't know what their role is anymore. And I've come up across that as well. But I just feel that, um, I think it's like anything else. I feel that unfortunately, the stigma of mental health and addiction is still alive and true, where we do not look at the severity of it and the urgency of it and needing to change as much as we would with like a physical ailment, which is so unfortunate. I think where Kelly and I definitely can agree, and at least my voice has gotten lower because of it, is many times we are telling families to love differently, to do this differently. And we're fighting for this kid's survival in a way more than their family is. And there's something that's either they don't want to look at how they've contributed, they don't want to look at their childhood. They don't, I remember we would have at my old treatment center, we would have a family weekend, and the CEO purposely would stock the bar. And I used to say, "Why are you stocking the bar?" And he goes, "Because I do an exercise. I want to see when the parents are there the first night and they're meeting all the other parents, who's having a drink. No shame. But the next day we asked them, so you met so and so and met so and so. Were you having a drink to do that?" And they were like, "Yeah, we had a drink." Right. So see that you needed, you needed a little something,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
now we're asking our kid, ask for a number, make a relationship. We're taking away the whoopee. You
Without
know what I
that
mean?
social lubricant. Yep.
Yeah. And so I think where and unfortunately in all the treatment centers I've worked, there's only been one that has mandated family involvement. If you do not stay involved as a family, we will discharge the client, which I think is amazing.
I do too.
Um, what is if you could erase one misconception about family involvement in treatment forever, what would it be?
Say that question again.
If you could erase one
Misconception.
misconception, like what's like one thing that everyone thinks family involvement is and it's not?
That family therapy is about assigning blame,
Okay, that's good.
right? Of like, whose fault is this?
Right,
You're the reason you
right,
made me, if not for, right? So they feel like they're going to be attacked. And in family therapy, we're not looking for villains. We're looking for patterns,
right,
because when you can interrupt those patterns, you can allow for people to respond differently.
right,
And so I think people are understandably scared. And oftentimes these family members, to be fair, they have been absolutely berated by
right.
their loved one. They have been told, you are a piece of shit parent,
But not
spouse.
always. It's
Not
not like,
always, not
but
always, but
yeah,
oftentimes when people are impaired, are not,
right,
operating from a healthy, stable
right,
brain, they
right,
are lashing out. They are
right,
deflecting. And
right,
who do we do that to? We do it to the people who love us,
right.
because there's something to be said for unconditional love. So I'm a big believer. I say this to my kids all the time. Hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
So when
That's true.
someone's hurting on the inside, they
Right.
need other they need to
Right.
spread that pain, to share that pain, right? So they're
Right.
gonna come at the people that they know are still going to be by them at the end of the day.
Right.
And so these family members have been told these stories about how horrible they are and how this is their fault. And if you would have just done this, then this would have happened to me, or if you would have done this, or right. So they're scared. And I think when families can stop um feeling like they have to defend themselves and
Yes.
just start being curious,
Yes.
then real healing can happen. And again, it's not about assigning blame. It's just looking for the patterns so that we can all, as a family
Mm.
system, change how we move forward and change how we respond to one another and not love less, love differently.
I always like to talk on the show that not everybody has those resources to go to treatment. Not everybody is able to get a family interventionist. But I will say today, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this. What do you offer families that maybe are low cost or no cost? Like family support, Zoom. A lot of people think of just Al-Anon. Now there's parent and family support meetings. And for a lot of treatment programs, that's an open forum for anybody to jump on, and you don't have to be a patient.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the most important thing families can do, regardless of resources, is build a support system. Be around people who you can relate to, that can relate to you, because oftentimes families have been living in just as much isolation
Right.
as their loved one has, right? And so, there's something to be said for the white picket fence where they don't
Right.
talk about it. And from the outside, their life looks great. What they post on social media,
Right.
everything's
We don't
beautiful
post
and
that stuff.
happy, right?
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
post the meltdowns. We don't
Right.
post the fights. We don't post that. And so families become incredibly isolated. And the biggest gift they can give themselves is to find a group of people that they can relate to. So, to your point, whether that's Al Anon, Naranon, Families Anonymous, or just other support groups that don't have to necessarily be associated with any kind of 12-step fellowship, but just healing happens so much faster when you realize you're not the only one living
Yes.
in that experience, and you can let those walls come down, and you're not afraid of being judged or shamed, or that people are going to look at you as a bad parent or a bad spouse or a bad
Right.
kid, right?
Right.
um, and just educating yourself,
Right.
especially on, mental health and addiction. And it's not just a matter of willpower, as, we
Right.
everybody in our industry talks about. You can't just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like it's much deeper and harder and just nuanced than that.
Right.
So
And
and learning,
complicated it.
very
And
complicated. But
and
but how do you support someone without enabling them? How do you let someone experience natural consequences instead of rescuing them?
right.
How do you stop walking on eggshells because you're trying to avoid conflict?
Right.
Um,
Right.
and learning that, whether it be, to your point, some families, they don't have the resources to go to like a Prospect Hill, right, where we're
Right.
doing intensive family therapy and we're doing the psychoeducation and we're doing the integration. But there's so many resources out there. There's so many free support groups. There's so much literature. There's books you can read. There's online support groups. I think it's just being willing to do something different.
Right. And I think it's and I see this time and time again when I'm on the phone with parents and they get mad at me when I say this, but it's the truth. I'm like, you're making this so much more complicated than it needs to be. All I'm asking you to do, and these are for the parents who maybe their child is not in treatment yet or loved one, but they have a therapist, right? Or their kid. And I go, here's a thought. um, why don't we just follow what the therapist is recommending to start, right? They were like, how tragic and sad it was that their kid needed treatment. I go, that's not tragic and sad. Tragic and sad is when this kid isn't being intervened on, right? What we're doing and what you're doing is giving your child an opportunity and your family an opportunity to become the best versions of yourself.
And
I
you're
only
giving your unborn grandchildren an
right
opportunity
a
to be
fighting
born
chance
into a family system
and
that
break that
is much
chain.
healthier, right?
Right. It's, when I think, it is an opportunity, and I only wish, I was 27 when I went to treatment. I only wish somebody had intervened on me as a kid, because it would have saved so many years of struggle and so many years of self-medicating. And I'm here to say it. It's so true. It's still like under construction, mental health, addiction, all of it. Nobody graduates, right? You just have to kind of still keep at it and just take care of yourself.
But addiction's the only disease that people don't show up at your door with a casserole. Because again, there's so much shame, there's so much stigma.
There is.
But
It's again an honor and a privilege for someone to call me in need. My hope is that they will listen to the suggestions and the resources that we're offering. You know what I mean?
well, and when we talk, to talk about how we can't heal it for somebody else, I think it's just as important though for them to know while you didn't cause it, you can't control it and you can't heal it for somebody else. You absolutely have the power to change how you respond to it. And for
Yes.
families, that is everything. So you cannot control any of that, but you do have power to change how you respond. And
Right.
when you show up differently, when you create an environment
Right.
that allows for systemic changes to happen,
Right.
that's the greatest gift you can give your loved one. But it's hard, right? If this
It
was
is
easy,
hard.
everyone would do it. If this was easy, this podcast wouldn't be happening right now.
Right.
To be honest, if it was easy, treatment centers wouldn't need to exist. Family
Right.
therapy wouldn't need to exist.
Right.
But
Everybody
it's
would be doing it, and
everyone
also
would be doing it. And
Yeah.
you just have to, the greatest gift you can give your loved one is to not sacrifice yourself for them, but to become the healthiest version of yourself for them.
Right.
And it's so much easier said than done.
Right. And so when I have a family who comes into treatment and they're automatically just really focused on their kids' therapy per week, or when's family therapy starting, or really just focused on their kids' treatment, and we flip the script and say, well, can we ask that you start to maybe be open to seeing somebody? Like, when things like that start to happen in those conversations, it's important, because what we're trying to do as treatment providers is like what Kelly's saying is, you can't save anybody, protect anybody, and babysit your child or lock them in the basement and think that nothing bad will happen. All you can do for yourself is to your to to do the work on yourself, and also practice on how you react to all of it. And because if you react differently, then the results will be different as well, I think.
Absolutely.
Right, Kel?
Yes, Hannah.
All right. Well, I am very grateful. Please, everybody, tune in. Look at the show notes. Kelli is a co-founder, CEO of a brilliant, amazing treatment center in St. Croix called Prospect Hill. I can't speak enough about it. It truly is individualized, amazing, amazing treatment with amazing providers. And so, Kelli's doing the good work. So
Well,
thank
and
you
then this is
again.
where I am. You are welcome. And I'm going to correct you because I'm not the co-founder of
I mean, not
Prospect Hill.
co-founder.
But we do have two amazing co-founders.
They
One of them,
do, they
Dr.
do.
Lindsay Wagner, who's a neuropsychologist who's brilliant. And I'm sure she'll watch this episode and be like, oh, interesting. Kelly's just pretending that
Kelli
she
created
started
the
this.
world. She's amazing. No, I will say there's
Thank you,
few
Hannah.
people, Kelli, that I have met in this industry that I don't need to see a facility or have an experience where they can just look at me and say, this is good work being done. And I will, for them saying that, I believe it to be true. And that is true. And so everybody's very lucky to ever work with you and have people like you in this industry. So.
Well, right back at you. And that's why we keep our circles small, because I'm very blessed
We
to have
don't talk
people
to
like you
anybody.
in my life. No, absolutely, just each other.
All right.
But thank you, Hannah. Thank you for
again.
everything you do for so many. Hannah only likes talking about other people and giving
I
other
do.
people praise. She right now she's going to be, oh my God, stop talking, Kelli, stop talking.
And cut.
Don't cut, don't end.
As I sweat.
Hannah, you are beyond kind and generous and knowledgeable, and you give so many shits, and that's what makes you you. And you
Thank
have
you.
absolutely touched so many family members, so many individuals. You have saved families because you do care so much. So
Thank you. And I'm funny, everybody. You don't see a lot of that on this, but I am funny. But all
Real
right.
funny.
Thanks again. Please tune in next week and subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. New episodes come out every Thursday. Thanks again. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Connect Call. As we conclude, remember that insights shared are intended for informational and educational purposes only and should not substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. We strongly recommend consulting a qualified medical health professional or healthcare provider for personalized advice tailored to your unique needs. Your mental health journey is important, and having the right support is essential. If you're experiencing a mental health crisis or require immediate assistance, please reach out to a mental health provider or emergency services in your area. We're grateful to have you as part of our community, and your well-being remains our priority. So follow us on social media to stay connected, and be sure to catch one of our episodes on our YouTube channel. We're here to support you every step of the way.